I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and co-owner of PurePleasureShop.com.
I'm April, VP of the cutting-edge sex toy company Hot Octopus, and I dedicate my life to the business of sex.
We are on a mission to teach you how to have hot sex, deep intimacy, and how to make your own rules for who you are as a sexual being.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Revolution.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to your monthly bonus episode. What does that mean? It means that it is ad-free. Hooray! You all love ads. You don't like ads. I don't know. We get mixed reviews. And we need ads because that keeps the podcast free for you all. And guess what? We only choose sponsors that we absolutely love because April and I are real picky on our side.
This is an ad about ad-free shameless sex coming to you hot.
So spend $9.99 right now.
So go ahead.
At 555. Just kidding. Okay, so as is with all of our bonus episodes, we're just going to dive right in. We have the wonderful Finn Deerhart on our podcast, on our show. Finn is a sex and intimacy coach who can help you have relationships that are way deeper, way hotter, and that will change your life. Who does not want that?
Right.
I do. He's also tagged, I got this from your website, Finn, so I hope this is okay. The gay rebel with a heart-centered cause. Love it.
I love that.
Because I like April and I are fucking rebels too. So we're pretty heart-centered with a heady twist.
Yeah. Is that self-proclaimed, self-deemed the gay rebel? Or did someone give that title?
It's kind of a combo. Like I do call myself a rebel. There's a part of me that's totally rebellious, and it used to be, harmful for me. Now I really think I'm channeling it in a way that really works for me mostly. But I also worked with a rebranding group, and they heard me say that, and they're like, "Ooh, and so they kind of tweaked my words, and yeah, Storyhouse Creative, they're awesome."
I love it. I love the heart centerpiece. And I've met you in person, and I know your partner. And so I know for a fact that you are a heart-centered being. You're a wonderful human. And let's just dive right into the story of who you are and how you got to be where you are today. Tell our listeners more about Finn Deerhart.
Where do you want me to start? Like all the way back?
Yeah, it's the day you were born. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, so... Okay, the edited story here. Like I was raised in the South. My dad was a minister in the Church of Christ, or still is actually, and really, really strict Southern religion. The strictest that I know of. Like it was pretty intense. And my dad also was really harsh and severe with me. And there's just been a lot of trying to work through that the rest of my life. But the way that impacted me so much was like sex was like a huge issue in our family. Like it was like an embarrassment to talk about, even with my parents. It was like I didn't really see them being very affectionate a lot, and like anytime sex was like brought up, there was also like the Bible would have to be brought up too. They kind of like went hand in hand, and I got punished a lot for talking about sex. I snuck around a ton, and I knew I was gay really early on. I had some experiences with my friends and Cub Scouts and stuff, and I just started like really stuffing that down, and I was really terrified. I was bullied at school a lot too. So I just kept pushing that further and further in the closet. I got married to a woman after I actually went to ministry school myself and had a congregation of my own for a while. And I married her, and I really loved her a lot. She was my best friend at the time, and I really cherished our relationship. But there was also like this element of like feeling really safe because like this beautiful woman chose me, and that kind of made me safe in my mind, from all the abuse that I'd taken in my life and the fear of being gay. So that went on for many years, like 8 years, and we were together and we dated guys together. We started trying to like experiment with like what was coming up for me as authentically as I knew how to, but really I was very dishonest and living a double life and, having sex with men a lot. And in the end, that was a painful thing, coming to terms with just being gay and just being able to say that out loud. And, so then I got gay, like I was only gay, and guys. And, I was doing the singles thing, and, I didn't really have to encounter the shame stuff until I got into this partnership that I'm in now, actually. because I dated a lot of guys and I'd had boyfriends, but I controlled those relationships so much that I didn't really have to really touch what I was carrying. And then in this relationship that I'm in now, about 4 years ago, I started really feeling the effect of shame in the form of inhibitions in my body, and just like panic, and like a lot of the things we all say these things to ourselves in our minds, we kind of like bury them a lot. And then when they come to light, it can be really scary. So I got into therapy, and eventually it became my life path. It's like my work now, because I was so affected that I wanted to help other men, because I started talking about all this stuff, and other guys were like, oh my God, me too. Yeah, we can go into more about that too, about if you want to know more about like how that was showing up, but that's how I got here.
And that's your inspiration. So in the work that you do, so many people that we interview I think the last person we interviewed, Ida Mandalay, was like, I got into this profession of sex education and therapy and being a social justice advocate because I was pissed, Yeah. And so we all often get into it because of our own wounding or our own healing process. And then, then we see that we want to help people through the process as well. So that's what sounds like that was your experience. And I'm curious about, so there's a number of things we're going to talk about, embodiment and intimacy, and why this is important, sexual fantasy. And we'll specifically talk a lot about, more in reference to your work, which is within the gay community. And just also to clarify that you and I have talked about this. This applies to all kinds of folks, no matter what you're doing, and who you're interested in at what point in your life. This could be applicable to you. So just wanted to throw that out there. And if you could just start by sharing, why is embodiment so important in sex and intimacy? And I think some people also are like, embodiment, what does that even
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What is embodiment? Why is it important? Yeah. Do I want that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, lovely question. Also, I mean, to just for a second before we go on to that too, this is the work that I'm in because it is what I've been going through. And I think through the work, I'm finding more of myself, and through all these other people that I work with, and lots of men. Yes. I'm finding more of my own self. So it's kind of like this co-creative process with men, and even I have straight clients and straight couples, and, queer people of all different orientations. And, embodiment in sex really. So like when we think about sex, we think about a bunch of images, like your brain just, you think, what is sex? You have like these pictures in your mind of like certain positions, and the way like the way it would sound, and the way it would look, and the way everything would kind of roll out. And so that's kind of like a fantasy text around what sex is. But it's like a mental image, right? And so when we have this mental image, we kind of compare ourselves to what that is, and where does that framing come from? It's a collection of like, images in the media, ideas that we have about what we're supposed to look like, be like, fuck like, along with a lot of other things too, like wounds that we carry from our childhoods. Like maybe like with my dad, for instance, I could never fight back. And so there's this part of me that in my sexuality wants to be able to fight back, or, there's just all this stuff that we carry into sex. And, because we have such a vulnerability around it as a collective whole in our culture, we're not really taught about it in a really helpful way. In general, we're not, instructed on it. And most people, I've seen some statistics recently, most men, their introduction to sex is porn. And that's where they're deriving a sense of like technique and all kinds of stuff. And then also like in school, we're largely, our first sexual experiences are not about exploration and connection. They're really about like, positioning ourselves socially in our peer groups, and like who thinks we're cool if we have sex with this person. And it's kind of like this acquisition thing. It's about like power. It's not really about, for most people, hey, I like you, I want to explore with you. I want to see, what is that like? What is it like when you touch? There's so much that we're bringing into it mentally. So all that basically wrecks your ability to just be really present with your partners. And we may not feel the effect of this if we're like hooking up or like single and just kind of, rocking our world as a single, because we get to kind of project on people in a certain way, like project onto, a guy that would hook up with or something, like, oh, you're this kind of guy, and that means this to me. And but in a partnership, like you can't do that, because that person knows you, they know who you are, they know all the issues that you're carrying, that you can't just like make up who you are. So like you feel like the inhibition, you feel like the shutdown. And people describe that as like, you feel less sensation in your body, or you kind of want to pull away from the experience. You like worry about the way your body is positioned and try to like manage what the person is doing with you so that you can like, try to manage their opinion about you. So all these things are like showing up and they're in real time. That's going on in the body, but we aren't really connecting to what that is. Mm-hmm. So that's like the pain point, right? That's how it shows up in most people's life. So we don't want to go into all that when we're having sex often, because it like makes us feel really vulnerable. It makes us feel really bad about ourselves to like be like, oh God, I'm really scared of connecting with you. I'm scared of you seeing me. Or so we kind of just like stay in all these images that I mentioned around sex, and we try to reproduce these dynamics and images. And that's so different. That's such a different way of being physical with someone than just like noticing how it feels to be touched, like and sharing what you're experiencing with the person, and like meeting the sensation, like following the sensation around in your body, and like really, moving from that place about connection and pleasure than it is from about validation and becoming an image. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot of it was the people. There's the head and the being in your head and in your body, right? There's the
it's
piece
being
of
present,
and
it's
presence.
being in your body.
Yeah. A lot of it's we're constantly caught up with the thoughts and the stories and the worries and the insecurities and all these other. Am I doing this right, or is this right, or and instead of like, what do I feel and like, what's the sensations and what's happening in my heart?
For people. That's really hard for people, because then it's asking you to like go to this vulnerable place. Because if we go to where, well, what am I feeling right now? It's like, well, I'm feeling shame because you're touching me here and I don't like to be touched there, and like, or I'm feeling kind of scared that you don't want me in the way that I want you, or so then it's like, oh, people are like, I don't feel that, so you just kind of stay cut off from it. But the way to really exonerate that space and like free yourself from it is to go there and make, like a conscious effort to like move into that and work through it. And then you become all the space that was taken up in your body with all this kind of fear or holding back, or it starts to feel more electric. It starts to come alive, and it starts to be able to be usable space.
That's what I think of with embodiment is more aliveness. Yeah. Is this more? Actually, it reminds me of you, April. There's this Shark Tale. This is not even relevant, really, but there was this little cartoon movie called Shark Tale, and there was a shrimp in it. And the shrimp said, I work in the factory and I have 3 kids and I'm fairly happy. And those are not the exact words. And April and I had this joke about it, but I just think of the term of fairly happy as how a lot of people are living, especially with sex. Like, it's good. It's okay. You're tolerating, you're complying, and it's there, or maybe not experiencing a lot of that aliveness and that embodiment, that deeper connection to you and your partners. And so like, let's get away from okay and fairly happy and move towards fuck yes.
Well, I think this day and age, everyone's so in their heads and they're so in their screens. And you're so right, Finn, about kind of thinking the ways that you should be positioned during sex, or you've seen it one way in porn, or someone told you that was what a blowjob should be like. So you're not in an embodied space. You're more or less doing what you're trying to mimic, maybe what doesn't feel good to you, which I know I was guilty of over the years. And so I know that I've used meditation to sort of become a more present human. And I'm sure you have ways that you can suggest folks to become more embodied. Our listeners love tips and tools. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how folks can become more embodied?
Yeah. Well, meditation is a great way to start, because it's like, if you're not paying attention to what you're experiencing and like really being mindful and holding a space for yourself to know, then you can't really start, like in my mind. And that can be like seated meditation or moving meditation. Like I dance a lot for that purpose. I work out, but like, it's not like, you don't go to the gym or something, you see people on their phone and kind of like watching TV while they're running on the treadmill. And I don't think that's what it's for me. It's like, no, like I might listen to music, but I'm like, you're like tuning into the way it feels to move. How does that feel? Where's the quality of movement? Where's oh wow, I'm a little more tense here, and like trying to even out the body, and you're really just being in the experience of movement. Same thing with dance, like, oh, what's emerging for me? Not like, is this sexy? Do I look good? And like, is this like, but like, this is how my body wants to move with this feeling that I have right now. Like this feeling, if it were to take on a shape, would look like this. And the same thing in sex, it's like, what am I feeling right now? The problem is that I think most people have like and specifically men, and maybe women, May could really help me with this too on the perspective of women, but men have a big poverty around how they describe their internal world. And there's a lot of frustration that women express around what men do with sex and how they approach sex. I mean, but it's like men, like they don't know what, and like, what turns you on about this situation? They're like, I don't know, it's hot. I'm like, yeah. What else is there? They don't know. They don't have like a vocabulary often to describe, well, what it is like when I do this with her or him, I feel like this sense of like really powerful agency in my body, and like this sense of like I can do anything in the world, and like, so that's why it's so hot to you, that's what, and that takes on a shape too, like that, like when you're feeling really proud, right, you're really lifted up. When you're feeling sad, you're kind of collapsed. And so I think, in answer to your question, kind of bringing this full circle, start paying attention to the feelings that you're having in sex. Like, even if there's like a sadness there, or even if there's like something that's really challenging that's there, like bring it in. Like it has to, if you can't, bifurcate your experience and leave part of it out the door, and then also have like this fullness experiences as well. So in a situation where it feels safe, you can bring that piece in and let your movement reflect how you're feeling, and using your body. That totally like blows away the like, well, we were supposed to suck first and then fuck and then do this and that. And then, like, it's more like, well, I don't know what I'll do. My body will just kind of lead me based on what I'm feeling. Such a different approach to sex. It's like, but you got to be in contact with that. So I think that's what I would recommend. And I would say for even establishing that for people, what I recommend, and I love doing, is like a self-pleasure practice where you're in your mirror and clearing the space for it, like instead of, a lot of people, when it comes time to like touch themselves, it's like a reactive thing. It's like, I'm bored, and so I go to the computer and I start to play with myself, versus like, I'm going to clear this space on Saturday morning at like 10 a.m. and for 2 hours I'm gonna like pleasure myself and use my mirror and like be in that. That's like affirming, like, this matters to me, it's healthy for me, it's going to bring me something nourishing, and you focus your your presence there. And in the mirror, you start to just like watch yourself, not from like a fixing anything. Like, you're not going like to fix your hairs, but you're really going to like really be like, who are you? I want to know you, this person. And notice what comes up. A lot of guys that I work with will do that. And they're like, oh, I can't do it. I hate it. I'm like, why? Well, I just can't look at that, or I can't. I'm like, yeah, but if that's the way you feel when you really look at yourself, that's exactly what you're also carrying into your sex, like with other people. You might think you're hiding it, but you're not. Like, your body is just constricting its possibilities and its range and everything around this. Like, please don't see that I hate to look at myself. So yeah, mirror practice is beautiful. And then it's like finding what you love about yourself in the mirror, but also like anything that you do think is quote unquote hot from out there. Certain kind of guy, certain kind of woman, certain kind of person and characteristics, and then find that in yourself. So if it's like, for me, for instance, I'm like 5'8" 3/4", 5'9". Like, I do like a large man. I mean, my partner he's like, 6'3", and that brings up some like dynamics sometimes where I'm like, oh no, like he's better than me, or these beliefs that I have about that. But what I have to do is like, be like, I can't rely on a size delta to like make him feel small if I'm wanting to take up all this space. Like, I have to find that in myself. So in the mirror, it's like, how do I embody that? Like, where is my, size? Where's my version of that symbolic meaning? Does that?
Yeah. People do that a lot, where they rule out a whole category of folks based on size or appearance. Or I was always saying that I'm an energetic, opportunistic human when it comes to partnerships, and I'm like pansexual, if you will, where it's I go on energy and the human, not someone that looks a certain way and that is above 6'2". And a lot of people, like my single friends, have their what
their little categories?
Yeah, the
boxes?
categories, or their little their boxes. Yeah. It's like, what's your type? I'm like, no type. Right. And I think that's also important if you are single, or if you are partnered and this one thing is bothering you all the time or coming up for you. That's your stuff, right?
Totally.
How to try to tap into the physicality, the other things, maybe not the physicality, but also the energetic attractions that come up for you too.
I like I was envisioning it. I'm sure you could do mirror work in a lot of ways. I was envisioning like a full length mirror on the ceiling or something, which would be like kind of badass. I want one. I don't have one.
It'd be hard to clean. That's what I was
super hard.
Yeah. Like, oh,
there's a Windex on my bed, but yeah, something along those lines of just like really taking in all of you. A lot of people haven't even, I can speak for a lot of vulva owners, haven't spent time looking at their genitals in a mirror because they're kind of tucked in a way, right? So it's powerful practice to really take yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
One question I had for you. So on your website, I saw something that said sex is central to the gay experience and intimacy is not or isn't, and that you're here to change that. Can you explain more about that? Is this kind of more about like the embodiment piece and the more heart connection piece?
Yeah, it is. I love these questions. I'm just feeling grateful to be able to talk about this.
Yeah.
I mean, even to like what you're both really describing, you're talking about the type and like, most people aren't in touch with that way because sex to a lot of people, I mean, there's an awareness that there's meaning in it, but for most people, it's a physical experience. Men describe it as a release, quote unquote, and it can be, but it's actually you're in touch with the meaning. That's what we're really looking for under the physical experience. We're looking for the meaning, the existential piece. And then if we don't know what that is, we might have sex with a type of ours, quote unquote, but the sex sucks maybe because they're not really actually meeting you where you're wanting to be met. So if it were as simple as like a type or like some sort of physicality, then it would always be great, right? When you landed that type. But it's not, because there's a meaningful world, and I call it like the mythopoetic world. It's like it coordinates with like our psyches and like our fantasies and this collective domain of information and all the meaning out there. Like religion is born of that, like spirituality, dreams, archetypes, right? So fantasy is the same. And as it relates to gay men and this sexual experience, like our culture, I think this is my opinion, my bias. Gay culture is kind of at this place where permission has been like fighting for permission, right? As a collective whole. Like it's like, it used to be you couldn't, and it's still really terrifying for a lot of people to come out of the closet. But in general, there's a lot more acceptance. And so there's this permission that's been established. So sex has a different kind of characteristic than it would if like you had really like, for instance, if you had been like, in high school as a gay person, accepted and encouraged by your family to explore relationships and explore sexuality and really held in a conscious way and supported at school, you have a really different kind of sexuality. You just kind of come into sexuality differently. Other countries that start sex ed way earlier, they have a very different experience of sexuality, more positive affect. So gay guys, they'll meet and just like fuck before they know each other. And it's not bad. It's like, great. That's a great thing to be able to express your desire. It's, but it's like, but past that, like what is that? And when you ask people what is intimate sex, their natural first, association is like what? Like eye gazing and like one of my favorite questions is like, well, what's spiritual sex? And then everyone's like, well, it's like eye gazing, it's breathing. Really slow breathing. I'm like, okay, what's hot sex? And they're like, well,
fucking
hard,
like hard on the wall and like just
sweat
and like suck and fuck. It's like like there's that like split is not like because there's a difference in like intimate sex versus like hot sex. It's like the way that we imagine what it is that we're doing with our bodies. So it doesn't matter if you don't know the person. It's the first time you've ever seen them and you're having sex with them, you're still doing something that is one of the most intimate things that you can do because you're connecting with that person in a way that touches your most vulnerable stuff, your childhood wounds, your expectations, hopes, dreams. It's all existential. It's not just this like, oh yeah, I loved it. We sucked cock. It was good. And that might be all that you're tuned into, but there's a different experience, right? It's like a meaningful thing. So that's what I really want people to understand in my work is like, what's beneath the sensation? What's beneath the physical pursuit? What does that mean for you? How does that give you access to an internal world in yourself that really is alive that you may not know about? And like, how can you like also behaviorally maybe like sculpt your sexuality in a way that helps you get more fulfillment, more joy, more connection with other people, more feelings of positive, self-worth.
When I've been on Grindr or Scruff with my gay friends, I always, because I love that shit. I've never done any of the app dating before.
She found me a date on Tinder once. It was great.
And sometimes I'll just like, let me see what you're working with here. So, because I never had experience with it. And this isn't really helpful. I just thought it came up for me while you were talking about that. And it's so awesome though, because you get dick pics like in 2 seconds. I'm like, okay. Wow. It's straight to the point when there's so much more finesse that has to go into a lot of the other like Bumble and the ones that are more engaging with the hetero sexual folks. Mm-hmm. So but I love that too, that it's just straight to the point, like, hey, and then it's like, want to come over? And I'm like, wow, you didn't even really you just saw his dick pic and then a picture of
right.
his body, but it works for some reason. And then, I
but like
think,
what happens at, later, right? Yeah. That's the question.
And so, a lot of folks just want to fuck. They don't want the whole intimacy part, but it is important even for your own self, kind of not to value yourself more, but to get in touch with what you're into. And what intimacy has been a huge challenge for me in many of my relationships. It still is, because it's hard to define what you want to talk about as part of your sexuality.
It's also scary, and risky, because there's vulnerability there. There also could bring up you can also have these things, these blocks, these fears that come about not being, enough. I don't have enough X, Y, and Z to be able to share myself, so that I think that's another thing is, some people might just want to fuck. But a lot of those folks also might just be afraid of what's next, what's on the other side, because there's a lot more risk there, and if there's a lot of risk with fucking too, for all folks too. And when the heart's there, holy shit. Oh my God.
Go way deeper, and it's more, both people will benefit in the long run. And if the person rejects you, or it feels like a rejection, that's also something that you can learn from, right? Okay. What came up for that person? Because that could be just their stuff that they're holding on to.
Yeah. And it's all like this world that we're not taught again. We're not really shown how to connect this to sex. We go, oh, this is forbidden, and this lives in this category out here. And like, how do we really access that? Like initially, like where did you first learn about sex, and what were your formative experiences there? Were they like
ours?
Yeah.
Or I think I heard from peers, and
other kids,
other kids, comprehensive sex education that didn't talk about pleasure, media, and things like that. I think I hacked into my mom's either like Joy of Sex or Kama Sutra book. Thanks, Mom. She's listening. She always listens to every episode, and things like that. And so, my mom did talk about birth control, but we didn't have conversations around pleasure. So and the rest of it, trial and error, just trying some things, and probably porn later and all of that. Hence why I'm doing what I do now.
I totally found my mom's porn when I was young.
Thanks, Mom.
How old was I? I think I was 11 maybe when I actually, and then before that, maybe Playboys, but that wasn't sex. I just would look at the naked bodies. I had masturbated at a young age, but I didn't realize it was masturbation. I just didn't really understand what it was. But movies, definitely. When other sex scenes came up in 80s movies, VHS, I would remember the part and rewind and fast forward until I got to the part and like walked like,
humping your stuffed animal.
And that's all part, I think, of being a child and not having access to the internet back then. Now there's so much more access, and there's still not a lot of conversation, which is it is challenging. You mentioned, in the U.S. especially.
Go ahead.
I was to say the intimacy we're shown on media is like the rom-com stuff. It's
it's not really
it's
not a realistic picture. In fact, these things are so fucking hard to let go of. Like I still have been recently. I've been struggling to let go of these images of like what things are supposed to look like or to be like. And when I don't really conform to that, like not shutting my own body down, or even romantic projections too in a relationship, like, oh, it's supposed to be like this. And like what's underneath that image, that's a fantasy, right? It's a fantasy of what things are supposed to be like. And the reason we have that fantasy is because it's not like that. And underneath it, we have a wound. It's like, if you peel that sticker of the fantasy back, it's a fear. So like if my fantasy, for instance, to illustrate is like, oh, when you walk through the door, you're supposed to just always want me. And that's like definitely a vulnerable admission of mine. Like, it's like, you're supposed to want me all the time. And that's not like it's not like that. But I'm like, you're supposed to want me like that. And like have that, and if it's not like that, something's wrong. And it's actually not true that something's wrong. Sometimes he's going through a hard time and he really needs some time to come towards me, or, but I'm like, well, this isn't like, rushing into like sex and but that's an example of like, underneath that's this deep vulnerability, because I'm like, I'm not wanted, and this is proof of why. And that's part of my own erotic theme, like issues around my parents and my dad, and relationships that were really painful that I went through. So anything that like looks like that, if it smells like it at any level, I'm like, he's like, oh my God, I just kind of feel tired right now.
Well, that's what we were going to ask you about sexual fantasy, and you kind of opened the lid on that jar a little bit. But it's like to talk to folks about utilizing their sexual fantasies, which perhaps it is the rip your clothes off or sex on the washing machine. Who knows what it is? It's different for everyone. Maybe it's more of the BDSM stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how tapping in or sharing your sexual fantasies can help uncover some of the needs, emotional, and also talk a little bit about how it can perhaps enrich or even make your relationship with your partner or partners better, improve.
It totally can. It's got to be like there's just a lot of perspectives there to discuss, but it can really help. And the reason I say that is because, like, again, these images that we hold are part of our fantasy text. And fantasy could be anything. Sometimes people are like, I don't really have fantasies. I'm like, yeah, we all do. It's experienced differently for different people. Somebody, it might be a narrative, like there's like a fireman that does this, that comes at me. And, but for some people, it's just like, well, he rubs my shoulders, he does this, but in real life, maybe that's not what's happening in the relationship, but that is the fantasy. Like, he cares about me in this way. He invites me forward in this way. It's like to be interpreted symbolically, or even a sexual position. Like, I've done a lot in workshops. I found very valuable. It's like, have everybody kind of get on their knees, like they're sucking dick. Like, what comes up for you here? And people are like, worship, hatred, excitement, greedy, everything. And we're like, oh wow, listen to like the spectrum of like association around a body posture, which again, kind of circling back to embodiment,
Ooh, I love that you do that, by the way. I love that you have people get into a position and to feel that's awesome.
That's the only way to get I found to get guys to really start understanding this, like, oh wait, it's like a meaningful experience. It's not just like, oh, it's fun, it's hot, it feels good on my dick, it's exciting, and she likes me, and he like it. Yes, but like, oh, I'm also like, I feel like a king. Oh, also, I feel like I'm like, I have to take care of you, and I have no choice. These are the kinds of the texts that start to really make us feel really fulfilled in sex. And so, you might be in a partnership, to your question about. How can that enrich relationships? Like, you might be having sex with the same person all the time, but sex is not the same thing as eroticism. Like, you can do it, friction, but it's like, it's two women. Like, how long have women in history been like doing it, but not getting nothing out of it? Right? It's like for the guy, because there's not like this meeting of the meaningful part about it, like what this is an expression of, for one. So your fantasies are like this like symbolic mythological narrative, and like a text that you can really interpret. That's like an archaeology of your childhood, really, of like everything that ever happened to you, like this stuff around shame, for instance. Like for me, like, it's forbidden, you can't do it, it's wrong, like you sneak. And I was like, early on, I was like sneaking all these different experiences, and everything had to be like so secretive. So naturally, I've like developed this like appetite for like violation of prohibition, like breaking rules, and it brings me a sense of agency, and like this, like, I claim what I want, I do what I want. So you kind of like get really turned on by things that are like taboo or violating some sort of thing. And people have this like, why is it so hot to me to cheat, or why is it so hot to me to, because there's a layer here, in your fantasy world, that like, it needs to be addressed, it needs to be understood, it needs to be integrated into yourself consciously, or you're going to keep fucking up stuff, or so you just start looking at that, like, what does this mean? There's some awesome resources out there.
What does it mean if you watch step porn?
Stepdad.
I have a friend of a friend. No,
also
knows myself. I like step porn, for instance, like stepmom, stepdad. I don't know what it is.
Oh wow.
It comes from
because it's naughty. It's so naughty.
I never had any attraction to any of my step parents, by the way. Not a one, never. And and now I'm in this step parent role, and it's weird. And I'm like, oh,
but she kind of is a step parent, though.
Right.
Yeah. Is the thing. She has, her partner has 3 kids, but it's like, and it kind of just started while you're in the relationship.
I guess.
Sounds like you're working through some shit, like something like
what shit is it?
Well, it's hard to say. Like, I couldn't know in this like moment, like instantly, because it's indexed to lots of stuff. But it is, I would say, it's a really valuable experience. The problem is, like, most people's fantasies, they bring up stuff that like they put us like in conflict with our preferred self-image, right? And so it's like, oh, I don't want to even admit to myself that turns me on. But really, it's like, why not like really be curious about those things and start to like excavate it for meaning? So like the question would be like, an initial question is like, in the presence of my object, I feel what? It's reflexive, so like, in the presence of this person, this type of person, this scenario, I feel what? And you just kind of like try to find like, how does this make me feel?
What do you feel, Chip, when you're watching step porn?
That it's bad.
Oh,
Right.
bad.
Well, like, like Forrest,
Like I shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So I shouldn't be doing it. It's not like as close as like incestual, but it's like there's like this like something in that and like a family dynamic for you to explore. I don't know if it's like, connected to your own family experience particularly, but they're like, these are symbolic things. It doesn't mean necessarily step parent. It could mean like some component. Like, what does that really symbolize to you?
I mean, I watched MILF porn all the way through high school all the time. As soon as I had a computer, MILF porn. Now
Then it was taxi cab porn.
Right. So, well, this isn't about me. I just wanted to know.
Right. No, this is great. I mean, like all that kind of comes up a lot with like, there's so much around incest and family. There is, people are really horrified when they think those sorts of things. They don't want to talk about it, but it's like, well, of course, because there's like family wounds and dynamics that are unfinished. And the erotic is really, I think when we have fantasy, it's like the erotic showing us in like this like projected way, like where there's a lot of meaning to go back to, know? So like doing naughty things, like what about that?
Yeah.
I think it could be when you said this, that I always had such volatile relationships with my step parents growing up. Like this is my taking the control back in some way. So that's because that is what's come up, because I've thought about it before. And I really do think when I'm doing I'm doing so much work now on myself, and now I am in this step parent role, and it's to a daughter of my partner's daughter, and I love her and she's awesome. And it's like, oh, maybe it's me taking my power back and being like the best possible step parent. And I'm like, yeah. So it's interesting, and it's not all the time. It's just something that's come up where I'm scrolling through the categories. I'm like, let's see what this is about. And it's not exclusive to just a stepdad or a stepmom. It's either or, whatever looks better.
Yeah.
I give it like a couple minutes. I'm like, not boring. Next.
Whichever one has the deep anal scene.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I don't know if that's true. I made that up.
Yes,
that would be me.
The stepsons in there look really young. I'm like, is this person old enough
barely
to be
legal?
But that's just a side note for you.
I love watching the way the sexual fantasy and our erotic stories are then what can get us turned on, and how, for as someone who's a feminist who likes rape fantasies and things, doesn't want to be raped, and it's like you're saying, it's conflicting, but it speaks to some things from wounding, and it's not, I was not raped in my lifetime, and I do have issues with the masculine. I have the issues where I don't feel strong, or I feel like I'm have to caretake masculine, etc. So it's this space where all of a sudden I can be in this other role or something like that. So I just love looking at it from this perspective of there's not really anything to fix, or no one is broken. There's nothing wrong with you as long as it's consensual. And there's a lot that can come through there when you explore it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, like, I encourage you to, like, the quote, I think you might have probably heard this quote, Esther Perel says, we light between the sheets what we protest in the streets. It's like a power dynamic, it's like whatever we're finding hot, whether it be in the collective domain, which most people, there's like a collective idea in our country that shares all, because we come from similar cultural values and things. But that's like an inquiry into like our relationship to power and why, like, where does this fantasy for me hold some sort of broken relationship to power in myself and to others in my early community? And that's really kind of the inquiry point. So of course, like rape fantasies are one of the most common fantasies amongst women. And a lot of women are horrified by that, but it's like, well, of course, like, and then like the meanings there too. It's like, there's so many different meanings around it because we're all individuals, but like, I'm so irresistible. I couldn't stop. You couldn't stop. Like, if you have this deep fear of not being wanted, oh, I'm so irresistible. I'm taken. I can't, or like, in this situation, this time around, like, I can't hurt anyone. Like I'm restrained. Like I can't hurt you with my sexuality. I'm actually just like confined. Now I can feel safe enough to be turned on. There's just so many different meanings behind it.
That's, the taxi cab porn stuff started after I was assaulted by that Uber driver.
Oh my God. That is amazing. That you just put that together.
I just put it together because I was thinking.
I'm not laughing at your assaulting.
No,
sorry.
Right.
I didn't mean that, but just the fact that the light bulb just
went on. It was a very traumatic
experience.
experience.
I'm watching her eyes over here.
I was thinking about it because I was like, why do I like taxi cab porn?
Yeah.
Because it's about taking back the control almost for me. It's for me. And that's something that was beyond my control and super scary and traumatic and reassessing that because that was in 2015 2015, I think. Yeah, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And the taxi cab porn started in mid 2016.
Dude, Finn, you didn't know, but you just did some sex coaching.
Girl.
Sex and relationship coaching on April.
Yeah, I mean, but that sounds like very, very connected, you know?
Wow.
And you know, that like, it's like, you know, whatever, like Seeking Power, you know, Jack Morin's The Erotic Mind, such a powerful reference for people. I recommend everyone read that book, relationship, non-relationship, whatever, to help you understand these sorts of things, you know, because you're either seeking power, you're trying to overturn some sort of ambivalence, you're, you know, wanting to violate a prohibition, or you're like having some sort of experience of, what's the other one? There's another one.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mostly remember just core erotic
yearning.
movie stuff. Yeah.
Yearning.
Longing. You know, it's like hot. Okay, the having is not as fun as like the wanting for it.
Oh, the grass is always greener over there.
You know, for instance, you know, I really get turned on by like fantasies about my partner getting fucked or something. And it's like, you know, well, a lot of cuckolding is like really huge right now in the gay community. Actually, probably in the straight world too. But it's like, what about that? You know, it's like wanting. Well, you look at my history, like there were years that I was just like wanting and vicariously experiencing sexuality through other people and like my friends. And like when people would come out of the closet, I would be like, well, I'm not gay, but I would just be like really envious of these people like, coming out of the closet and kind of like living through porn and living through all these images again, but not really in my own sense. So now I really have an embodied turn on.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about these things. Now, does that mean I really want it? You know, sometimes those sorts of things are fun, but often they're not for me.
Yeah.
You know, in real time, just like you're saying, like rape fantasy and all these other things, you know, incest, and doesn't mean we want them, but I do think it's really powerful to stay curious about it and then to share that with your partners. You know, if you feel safe enough to it. I even tell married couples, I have couples that have been married for like, you know, 8 to 10 years and they're just starting to open up about their desires with each other.
Yeah.
Like novel for them, but like if they'll like schedule a time, like we're just going to like masturbate with each other. I hate that word, self-pleasure.
Yeah.
And we're going to tell each other dirty stories about what's really on our mind. And you kind of like put a bid out there, you know, and like you share something that's a little risky and they get really turned on, you know, and then you go like, oh, and they share something. You just kind of like, you're trying to use your erotic energy to get turned on with each other about this. And you find all the overlaps that you have. And it's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
It can be shameful in some regard to share your deepest fantasies or desires. And that's the stuff that's not, it shouldn't be, right? We should all feel great about what our fantasies are, even sometimes if they are involved with rape or violence or gangbangs or whatever they look like. But I felt shameful about the porn that I've been watching. That's why I just outed it. Let you all know.
Shameless
sex. You know, I say too, like there's a tantric principle that I follow in my life. And you know, like Joseph Campbell's like follow your bliss. What does that mean? I mean, you heard that, right? So it's like following your bliss, what really enlivens you, and it might be outside of the programmatic way of life. And so you leave behind society's like, you know, like confines, and you go into like the dark forest and you meet your like shadow and you come back. That's like the hero's journey, right? So following your bliss isn't just like following a good thing that feels good. Like underneath the bliss is the pain and like the terror and being in contact with all the shit that like is in us and in the world, but also having this like unstoppable optimism in the face of it.
Yeah.
And in fantasy specific to sex, that's too, you know, like, oh, this really turns me on. I love going here. Well, if it feels safe and you're not hurting your body or another person, go there. Like follow the flame, burn through that fantasy and get to what's called the real. It's like the real is, what does this mean for me? I mean, you'll never figure it out if you kind of hedge yourself away from the experience or you kind of block the shame. Like, what does it mean for me to want this? Like, I'm going to go into this rape fantasy. And I'm really, you know, if you feel like you have the ego structure and the safety in yourself and in your partnership or, you know, fuck buddy relationship or whatever to do that, you can utilize it as like an intentional space to uncover meaning and power. Like what's beneath that? Like this rape thing, you know, who knows? But like, it's like, you know, feelings of what, you know, in your development. I hesitate to say anything for a woman because I'm I don't want to be that guy. I don't know what that's like.
I mean, like there's the powerlessness. There's caretaking of the masculine's emotions of putting them first and me being beneath and below and et cetera, feeling kind of walked all over in certain ways. And so I see that, and I see that there is a reclaiming of power in it being in my fantasies. And then in sex, I can, you know, I don't do rape fantasy stuff, but some dominant submission stuff where I'm consenting, you know, I'm choosing that. And actually, just so you know, like the bottom has a lot of power. I'm topping from the bottom. Okay.
So much. It's hingy on the bottom, right?
And that's empowering. I'm like, I'm still submissive, but like I'm running the show here too. So yeah, I love all this. We have to wrap this up because we have some.
Girls.
I know we could talk about this. That's why we are going to do this in person. We're going to come to San Francisco and we do this in person, and hopefully your wonderful, beautiful partner, whom you just got engaged to.
Yes. Oh my God, I love him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna marry this guy. I love it. I've always wanted a husband. It just feels like,
oh my God, he's
like, I don't know. I don't have this association like, ew, that's heteronormative. I'm like, yes, like he's my husband, and I want that.
Yeah,
well,
I'm so happy for you.
Any workshops you have coming up, and can you let our listeners know how they can find you or work with you?
Absolutely, yeah. So workshops coming up. I don't have anything in the immediate future. I'm going to be like teaching it. If someone, a gay man wants to go to, a queer man wants to go to the Tantric Love Festival in Glastonbury next year, or this coming fall. It's in August. I'll be there. Everything that I'm doing though, I will be having local events. It's on my website. So findeerhart.com, and that's FINNDEERHART.com. There's a regular posting of events there. Sign up for my newsletter, and there's a resources page. And I also, just for the listeners, like some really awesome quick resources to go to would be like Esther Perel's book, Mating in Captivity, Jack Morin's book, The Erotic Mind, Heart of Dominance by Anton Fullman, around like dominance and submission and headspace. Those are some really great places to start.
Awesome. Nice. And then you do sessions with people in person and online as well?
I do. Yeah, cool. Yeah. In-person session work in San Francisco at the Center SF, and then online on Zoom or Skype.
Oh, we love the Center SF. We've done a workshop there. Well, I am so thrilled that I got to meet you and that you solved some of my deep sexual fantasies.
I'll send you an invoice.
Yeah, right? we
totally worth it.
Absolutely enjoyed having you on the show, Finn. So thank you.
Yes.
And all of our Shameless Sex listeners out there, thank you for listening to this bonus episode, this ad-free bonus episode. We will see you next Tuesday or whenever we see you next, because this is probably on a Friday. So ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.